welcome to another episode. It's good to see you. I'm so glad you chose to spend just a few moments of your time with me today. Another heart-to-heart conversations to heal a stressed and broken heart. And I'll tell you, I feel like getting up during this episode. I feel like moving something during this episode. Some of y'all may not know, but Ludacris back in the day, he had a rap song. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It said, move something. So today we're going to talk about moving something with my special guest, the one, the only, Dr. Shabnam Islam. How are you?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I mean, what an honor to be in your hot seat,
That's right. We're swapping seats now.
Swapping seats.
I was on with you. So now, you know what? Guess what? Tables are turned now. Tables are turned.
I love your energy. You're always filled with so much positive vibes, and it's so intrinsically who you are. So it's truly a joy to be a part of this podcast today.
No, I appreciate that. I'm gonna tell you the one I pale in comparison to my father. Right, this man could like walk in a room and the lights just turned on. He could make you feel as if you somehow the most minute gift you gave him, he would make it seem as if you just bought him like $1 million mansion. I guess mansions nowadays are not $1 million. Back when I was a kid, they were. But it's your basic little fundamental house is $1 million in California these days.
Oh my God.
But how have you been?
I've been good. I was just telling everybody, I've just recently moved to Las Vegas after spending 15 years of my life in SoCal. So it's a big shift. It's a very big shift. Which is why I'm back in LA like every other week.
All right. So come on now. Vegas. It's Vegas.
It's Vegas.
The top 3 things you have grown to appreciate about Vegas in your short time.
Here's the deal. I love my community. I think it's safe. It's quiet. I get a lot of resources for the money that I pay. And like we've been saying, like now housing is just through the roof. We need to be in a place where what I do for my life is equitable in what I receive and the resources I need. And I feel like I find that here in Las Vegas. In addition, the food here is incredible. I thought that LA had incredible vegan options. Vegas kind of smacks it down with the options. Yeah. From whole food plant-based to the processed burgers and pizzas, there's something everywhere. And I think what's really good here is that even the non-vegan, there's like a steakhouse in Las Vegas downtown, Barry's Prime Steakhouse, that has legitimately a vegan steak on the menu.
What?
So, yeah, it's been pretty great. And third, except for the summer, which is now because I'm a huge cyclist. So it's been very hard for me to transition to cycling from the Palos Verdes, the coast of Southern California, to Hades. It is like my tires will melt. You know what I mean? So I'm waiting for it to actually get to be the fall because I hear the seasons here are wonderful. So I'm really excited to explore the landscape in a physical activity sense.
The unsolicited suggestion would be, right, so I'm not being paid by them, but Peloton.
Yeah.
You're like, nah, come on, that's not pure. I can't do that.
For me, it's like the green space. It does a lot more for my mental clarity and my mental health to actually leave the household, be somewhere outdoors, smell the sea air.
Are you trying to jump into my questions I'm asking? Why are you trying to jump ahead?
I'm sorry.
I mean, wait a minute. This is my show?
It's your show.
Hold up. Come on now.
I'm just wired a little bit differently. You know what I mean? So as of now, the fitness thing is a little less than Cali, but so far that's my top 2.5. I think that's good enough.
That's all right. Well, it's short time. It's gonna grow. Come on, my Vegas listeners out there. Don't worry. She's not throwing shade at Vegas at all. She's just learning to appreciate all of the warm weather that you have down there.
But you know what? I got a pool. So for the first time in my life, I'm swimming. I'm building that skill set. So I'm doing something in my fitness regime that is different, and I'm enjoying that.
Wonderful. So now your doctorate is in what area?
Educational leadership and policy. So my master's is in kinesiology, so the scientific study of human movement. And I've been teaching in that field for over 10 years, and I've loved it. But what I've seen is a real disconnect on how we teach the medical and the health sciences. And so we see a lot of students leave academia unprepared to be a professional in terms of exercise science and human performance, or even in physical therapy and occupational therapy, if we do not provide them with the opportunities to learn the skill sets they need to survive in a professional field and actually fit a need in the community. Like if we're having obesity, we need to use our skill sets in academia to help our communities in need. And then we start to see a complete connection of the dots, as we like to say. So they're better prepared after they graduate. So my research is really now studying the impacts of participation in a service learning course to see, does this help academic retention? And does it really help prepare students for a career in which they want to follow in the health sciences?
Okay, so in other words, you're saying that you're pretty deep.
Pretty.
She said, I just dropped some science on you right there. I know you don't know nothing about as a cardiologist. And I want to tell you that I'm looking at how your posture is sitting there, and I don't approve of your posture. So you sit upright, make sure, because I know it's a study of all the above, right?
You're right. And the funny thing, the posture thing probably comes from back in 2009. I entered my first figure competition.
Oh, wow.
Like bodybuilding figure on stage. Yeah. And I wasn't vegan at the time, but that was hugely instrumental into how I developed, how I stood, and how I showed up.
Wow. That's incredible. Listen, you have a life lived. So, all right. So how exactly did you get interested? Obviously, you're a bodybuilder, you're a cyclist, you're inside of kinesiology, the study of like the body movement and physiology and exercise. How did you get interested inside of activity and exercise?
I love that you asked that question because no one really asks me. It was 2009 and I was being interviewed by bodybuilding.com at the figure competition in Venice. So for Miss Muscle Beach. And I had won novice. And I remember when I was backstage being interviewed and they were asking us all these questions. And I looked at the girl next to me and I said, tell me, how did you prepare for this competition? What was your periodization approach? Like the macronutrient profile? And, and three of them just went. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. I would like to be associated with the science of fitness versus just the vapidity of fitness. I knew that there was more to providing people with solutions to getting to that end note if I could provide them the information in ways that they could better understand it. So that started my pathway for my master's in kinesiology at Cal State Northridge, which quickly, my master's thesis was writing a textbook to prepare students for this career in kinesiology. And it got accepted as one of the core curriculum for applied fitness. So I'd been teaching it because I had developed it. And then that kind of snowballed into getting into a doctoral candidacy to basically study the research of how people learn in the health sciences. And so I'm just been a really long academic, and I can see why it's time for me to transition out, I think, a little bit more from the university now.
No, that's incredible. I mean, I love it's very thoughtful in terms of the asking questions. I was just chatting with my sister, and one of the things, I have siblings who are a little bit older than me. So I was 17 when my niece was born. My sisters and brothers were 13, 16 years older than I am. So I've grown up with my niece. And so people actually thought I was a teen dad at one point. But I remember when my niece was going through elementary school, I told her, and I think at that point I was in medical school, and I told her, listen, you always ask why. Ask the next question. Try and understand. If someone does not have the capacity to explain it to you, they don't fully grasp the information. And so what I'm hearing is you sought to really understand the threads and the foundation of the why. But even digging back just a bit more, I mean, you don't go from like little girl to like, I want to be a bodybuilder, or maybe you do. So what was that transition? How'd you develop wanting to be a bodybuilder and getting into cycling, even beyond just the physical aspect?
I was, I grew up doing sports. I was a gymnast growing up at the YMCA. Like, we utilized our resources. We didn't grow up very wealthy. My parents are from Bangladesh. And so the figure competition thing was kind of like against the grain of me growing up Muslim, because it's like the
Yeah.
showing of the body. So maybe it was a little bit of like, ha, I'm first generation American. Let me show you how American I am. But a lot of that was the lack of inclusivity and the lack of love and appreciation I think I really had for myself at the beginning. Like giving myself a really hard time growing up in a predominantly white community in Richmond, Virginia. I never really felt like I fit in, even though I did, show choir and all of these kind of big stage things. I wanted to look the part. And there was a lot of media influence where I just never felt pretty enough or fit enough or good enough. And so when I moved out to Los Angeles, when I first graduated from college, I was a exercise specialist for Genworth Financial, which was located in Richmond, Virginia. And basically I just facilitated the area, helping train people, did lunch and learn seminars. And I realized, well, my degree in health communication has really helped me communicate with people, but I really want to be in this fitness field. So I came out to LA, got a job at Equinox. Santa Monica was training. And I was like, I'm going to put myself to the test as a study subject. And I worked hard. And I think when people look at figure competitors and bodybuilders and they just go, oh, I can do that. It's life's work. You dedicate your every hour, every minute is built around it. And you make a lot of sacrifices. And so that to me was the key there, that like, I can do this, but I need to do more in terms of just this. I want to do this. Yeah. And so there, I think you can do both. I think you can, but you also need to find joy in both. And I found that like when I was really restricting myself to always competing, I wasn't finding joy in fitness anymore. And I wasn't finding joy in eating. And like, I love to eat. Like, I mean, food is my motivation. So the figure competition was really eye-opening, because it really let me put myself on a stage, put myself out there, and then show myself my self-value, my self-worth, I think, So that was an exciting journey.
Huge. So much, you said so much in those few moments, to be honest with you. And from a standpoint of, I think from communities that are not the predominant community inside the United States, and I have to kind of give a sidebar, is the fact that I think the beauty and the strength that can be in the United States are really the multiple threads that build the fabric and that diversity that's there. But unfortunately, oftentimes, the perception in the media and the dominant culture sometimes can be of only aspects that are beautiful or handsome or successful. And I think that, well, first I have to say that, yes, you are beautiful. Yes, you do exude the intelligence, that yes, all the other aspects, and you know this already. And I think that that's powerful, but it's important to hear for our younger population, community, and individuals to really hear that there is power that's there, that you actually have it. So, I'm appreciative of that aspect of some of the stuff that you mentioned.
And, the intersectionality or the impacts of colonization have happened globally. And so when we look at my people from Bangladesh, I'm first generation American, but my parents are from Bangladesh. They fought in the...
No, tell people where Bangladesh is, because they may not know.
Right. So look on the map. It's southeast, tiny little country in southeast of India. And remember, Bangladesh actually used to be a part of India and Pakistan before its independence in 1971. And the reason why they fought this war is because they wanted to break British colonization, British rule. They wanted to practice their own religion, and they wanted to speak their own language. And so that happened in the early 1970s. And so it's a pretty new country if you think about the development of Bangladesh. And so when we look at this area of the world and its development through colonization, you have to see how that had its impacts on even those cultures. Like what we call Porsha means very light-skinned in Bangla. And so the lighter the skin you are, the more attractive you are. That's not just in the US, that's everywhere. So you can imagine the impacts that had even in my household. My mom being like, I was such a tomboy, and she'd be like, oh, she wanted to cover me. She's like, I'd come inside and I'd be dark. And her initial reaction is, oh my goodness, what do you do? Like, how do we scrub this off? And I don't think she understood the implications of that because of her own experience and victimization of
Yeah.
that impact
Yeah.
back then. So.
No, it's true. Colorism is it's a major thing. It's a major thing across the world globally,
And it's
and it
so
continues to be.
sad.
It is. It really truly is when you look at that. And it's like, man, that's a whole nother
Whole
conversation.
nother.
That's a whole nother conversation. But but it dovetails into another component. You start to allude to it. This role, this unique interplay that I think a lot of people don't understand. There is a relationship between activity, exercise, and mental health. Speak
Yes.
to that a bit. Speak to the power of exercise really in mitigating mental health issues.
Well, really, at the end of the day, the excess of energy, and we're talking about a hormonal balance, we start to see a shift in the chemicals that we see in the brain through physical activity, right? We're seeing like a shift in epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin. We're starting to see all these happy, benefiting chemicals take a major preponderance in the brain. We want to be filled with these things, increased elements of dopamine. All of these things happen naturally with activity, and they happen naturally when we have access to pure sunlight. And so even if we're talking about sunlight hidden behind clouds, this is a natural occurrence that happens as we exercise outdoors, which is why we find there being so much more evidence and support of like exercising in green space. Or even if people are exercising indoors, they're often doing it with things that mimic their outside. Like you'll see on a Peloton, you'll be like riding through the Alps, because we do see some sort of chemistry change in the brain that allows us to, frankly, feel better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much untapped power there as it relates to being outdoors. I mean, simplistically put, I kind of analogize it to like Superman. Where does
Mm-hmm.
Superman get his power from? The sun. Getting
Mm-hmm.
outdoors, it somehow the yellow sun energizes him. We have the same phenomenon as we're active, as we're moving, as you mentioned, all these chemicals coursing through our body, and we begin to get in green spaces and forest bathing and walking through what it does to our stress hormones to lower it. So those of you out there stressed, go out there and forest bathe. I don't mean roll around in the dirt, although you can do that too
You
as
could do
well.
that too.
You can do that too, but just go out and walk, and you all of a sudden you understand this kind of calming sense that comes over you, this sense of just euphoria. But I think the thing I love most, and we were talking about this before the show about kind of working on different things, you work dissertation, for me finalizing the book. I get my inspiration when I'm active. That when I go outdoors and I start to walk, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, wait a minute, it starts to click and things start happening. And these are the things that matter, draws me back in focus, especially when I do my outdoor walking that's there. So I agree wholeheartedly. There's a tremendous interplay. That's not even speaking about the health benefits,
And
physical health from chronic
And
disease.
in education, I often utilize what we call the Pomodoro effect. The
Mm,
Pomodoro effect is where we actually give a very finite amount of time to do what you need to accomplish. So, like, you have 5 minutes to write your introduction sentence and your close. That's it, 5 minutes.
mm.
And we start the timer. You are laser focused, and at the end of the 5 minutes, we give you double the amount of time to relax and release all of that tension and focus. So then usually I'll take my students outdoors, or I have them step outside. We do like a quick stretch of meditation, 10 push-ups, 10 squats. They drink some water and then they come back. And what we find in evidence and research is that people are significantly more efficient and effective if they start utilizing this Pomodoro effect, laced with some forest bathing or outdoor activity, because it just really does reset the mind.
Love it. Hashtag Pomodoro effect. I love it. I love it. And tagging on the learning aspect, we understand the improvement in learning and test scores by being active inside of our youth, inside of our adults, everyone, BDNF, many other hormonal compounds improving that. So that's powerful. All right. Question for you.
Yes.
Which one's better, exercise or diet?
For what?
Let's say weight loss. Look at you. Come on, you're gonna catch me on everything. You're not falling in any traps, are you?
It's always ask a question to get more answers, right? And I love
Well, I
that
can
you
tell you
asked
this. Let
that.
me tell you this, right? So when I was in training, we had this attending. I was in interventional training. He was like a godfather. He'd come in, he's like, Columbus, come here for a second. Step in my office over here, a little closet, right? I want to tell you something. And he said, always know what question you're being asked before you give an answer. I'm like, huh? Of course. But I'll tell you, that has been life-saving advice in my professional and personal life since that moment. And so I just have to pause to acknowledge the fact that clarification, there's never a problem ever with clarification. Absolutely. I do the same thing.
So for weight loss, I love that you asked this question because I think I have a study here that actually talks about it. But in a nutshell, what we're saying is that, can you lose weight exercising? Yes. Can you lose weight with diet? Yes. Do we find that when you combine both, we lose the most weight and we are able to keep off that weight? Yes. So really the evidence shows that those who combine chronic physical activity with a whole food plant-based diet or monitor their nutrition significantly can maintain the weight that they've lost for a prolonged period of time. Because what we start to see is that the diet is really 90% of the effect, right? We really need to, it's debits and credits, calories in, calories out. It's basic economics of the human body. However, what sustains that metabolic change is the fact that we've changed the lean muscle tissue. We've changed the body composition and chemistry to allow us to have, when we have greater lean muscle tissue, less body fat, we start to see greater capillary density, a greater communication network, I guess you could say, throughout the entire system. So we allow for more insulin to come in, right? We're more insulin receptive. We allow more glucose to enter into the muscle cell, which means we utilize more energy more effectively, right? And so if we really want to maintain that weight loss, staying physically active is really important with your diet.
Yeah, couldn't. You know what? Nothing to add. Perfect. Completely agree. Okay, what about exercise? What about those people out there who are diabetic or have heart disease? My main area in exercise. Is there value or should they be scared? Some people are just afraid after suffering with a heart attack.
I love that you say that, because exercise is really cardioprotective, which is why we always say exercise is preventative, even if you're someone who has suffered from a cardiovascular incident. As a clinical exercise physiologist, what we end up doing when we deal with patients like this is we're doing it in a clinical setting, like in the hospital, right? And we're monitoring their heart rate values and we're looking at the QRS complex and we're ensuring that they're doing exercising in a particular modality, a specific intensity, right? So if I have someone who suffered from a cardiovascular event, they're not going to be working at percentages of their heart rate max, like say a regular individual would. We would be having them work at heart rate reserve, which is a significantly lower intensity, which keeps the client safe and keeps us safe from litigation. So really, it's safe for everybody, right? But they're working at a significantly less intensity. But what we're showing in evidence is that by engaging in more vigorous activity throughout their week, so anywhere between 2 and 3 times a week, where we can see if someone is clinically obese or has some diabetic complications, but like is a diabetic, but not having any diabetic complications like neuropathy or anything of that nature. We do recommend vigorous intensity, which is anywhere between what ACSM would say between 77% and 93% of their heart rate max. And people are like, oh my God, that's high. Well, if you're thinking about,
tell people how you calculate your heart rate max.
So heart rate max is 220 minus your age. So let's use my age, 40, which make my heart rate max 180. Okay, that's like my top where I should be going. But if I really want to be working at a vigorous intensity, I would take my heart rate, which is 180, multiplied by 77%. And that would mean that I would be working at a baseline range of 138.6 or 139 BPM. And people are like, well, that's not very high. No, it's not. It's like me taking a 2 to 3 grade percent incline as I'm walking up to mescal. And what it looks like is me going, oh, damn, Columbus, this is kind of difficult. It's breathy. And so it gives us a justification that like, okay, this intensity is warranting me to feel out of breath, to maybe start to sweat just a little bit, to feel like I'm feeling challenged, right? Versus when I'm walking my teacup poodle and I'm taking a step and just looking. And that is just not enough to elicit the change that we need to happen.
No, I love that. I love that. And so, and that you're speaking my language, because this is some of the principles we apply inside cardiac rehab. And for our diabetics out there, speak to the research where the studies have shown. Some people say, I don't have time for all that, though. I don't have time for all that. The power of as simple as 2 minutes of walking after you eat, or at 5 minutes or 10 minutes, were some of the studies there. Speak to that a little bit.
It's not the total volume of time done in one setting. It's a total volume of time done in the 24-hour setting. So an
Yes.
accumulation of good behaviors and habits has a longitudinal effect, right? So if I've got 10 minutes to walk from my car to the office, when I get there, that's 10 minutes. I know I need 10 minutes to walk back from my office to my car. So why don't I take a 10-minute walk during lunch or after lunch, or walk to get my lunch and come back?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we see is that 30 minutes, 5 days a week, is just enough to keep us physically active, to keep us away from what we call sedentary, right? And when we start to have a sedentary population, what we're saying is, you need to be exercising minimally for 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week for the last 3 months consecutively. If you're not getting 90 minutes of just walking activity per week, that is of serious concern. And if you're not making time for fitness, you're making time for illness. And I'm sure plenty of people have heard that before, but you don't really understand the effects of it until you're laid up in a hospital bed.
That's right. That's right.
And the
Wow.
cost of that, I'm sure you can speak to, is like, what is the cost of, of like having an angioplasty?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the greater cost that bringing it home is the cost to your mental well-being. The fact of
Yes.
the fear, the stress, the anxiety that instills of wondering, will I live to see another day? That begins to happen. The financial cost of healthcare institution is obviously high. We're seeing this in terms of healthcare crises in America, but even from the standpoint of just really that falling into, like, this is my destiny,
Yeah.
that there's nothing I can do. And I think what's so empowering is the fact that you're telling us that simply by choosing to move, that this is empowering you, that this can actually change your destiny by just simply choosing to move, just like we speak about choosing what we eat. But now, speaking of choices, tell me your top 3 vegan athletes.
Oh, I love Lewis Hamilton, because like, who
Okay.
can do that? Um, my buddy John Sally, like, who has achieved what he has achieved in the NBA, and all in 3 different decades. Like, it's
Yeah.
impressive. Ooh, who is my next favorite vegan athlete? Can I go with somebody that's very close and dear to my heart, that maybe not be a professional athlete, but I see as an athlete, is probably Chef Babette Davis.
All right now, come on.
I think she's an older athlete in her own right.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Listen, she wins the triple gold in any competition for anyone, but especially, I mean, you talk about in 70s, but she could probably beat
72.
like those who are in their 30s and 40s on hands down on a regular basis.
We just went to Black Veg Fest in Brooklyn last week. And, we were walking around Weeksville, and I'm like trying to take video. And all of a sudden I look ahead, and she's like 37 feet ahead of me. I'm like, Babette, can you slow down? And she's like, oh, why are you walking so slow? And I'm like, are you kidding me? But I think that just goes to show the level of intensity at which she even just has a general walk is like a level zone 2 heart rate for me, where I'm working between 64% and 75% of my VO2 max just to keep up with her. And I think there's something to say about people that have those qualities.
No, for sure. I mean, and 2 points with that. I mean, there's been studies, and I'm speaking to professional here, but about just the power of like fidgeting and this idea of non-exercise activity thermogenesis in terms of a fat reduction. In other words, for you folks out there, it's just staying in constant body motion, right? People who speak with their hands and who kind of fidget their knees, and they get up and they're walking, pacing. Funny story is, back when I was in training, if I got a page and I was on the phone, the nurse one time said, watch this. I knew about this afterwards. And they just held me in place I couldn't talk because I'm so used to pacing when I talk. And they're like, could you sit still? And I have to pace. And when they stopped me, it's like I literally couldn't talk. I just everything stopped in that moment. And so that is
That
like
brain
that,
connection.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So there's power that's there. But tell us about some of the work that you're doing with Babette.
Vivette is fantastic. You know, we had been working for the last year to really trying to get her to a lower body fat goal. I think she was approximately like, you know, what, 16%. She wants to be at 12%. And I think particularly as you age, we start to see that there is a chronic disassociation with increasing muscle mass and strength, but that is often commonly associated with those that have greater levels of body fat or intracellular and intermuscular fat, or what we say, like, you know, visceral fat, greater adipose tissue under the muscle cell, or even what we're saying intramyocellular in the cell.
Yeah.
And so what we find is that if you can keep your body fat levels low, you really have incredible growth with muscle hypertrophy, gaining more muscle as you age. And what we find is that it has nothing to do as you age. We find that you can still gain muscle as you age. We just need to have less body fat, and we need to have a greater hormonal balance. And so my lucky thing with Babette wasn't the fact that I had to tackle her diet. You know, she gets up before the sun rises. She's fidgeting at 3 a.m. I know this because I stay with her in multiple hotels, and I'm like, damn, this woman, I guess I'm up at 3:30. No, but she's really quiet, so she lets me sleep. But then she blends her fruits and veggies. She very rarely juices them, so the high dosage of fiber is constantly there. And before y'all pop off about what else she puts in there, she doesn't put a protein supplement. She's been adamant about not using protein supplements. And look at her. Why? Because protein origination is actually found in fruits and vegetables. And due to the variety of the fruits and vegetables that she eats every day, she is pretty protein sufficient. But the exercises became a little bit more geared toward her needs, because what we start to see as you age is a lack of mobility. So because she didn't work on flexibility so much, we had to start incorporating flexibility, because what we start to see is that those that have lower levels of flexibility also increase their risk of risk of injury, particularly what we see of hip fractures later on in life.
Okay.
And so we really wanted to increase the lower leg mobility and the hip mobility. And we also started using some really heavy weights. Like Babette is known to lift upwards of 85% of her body mass in a carry. Wow. So she's like approximately 125 pounds, but she'll walk with like 100 pounds, 105 pounds for 60 seconds doing a weighted kettlebell carry. And what we see is that cardioprotective response. Not only does her heart rate shoot up, but she's building strength gains. And what we find in research, this is really cool, is that you've got more motor neurons and receptors in your hand than you have in the entire brachium or antebrachium alone, right? And so if we want to build greater strength, particularly to the shoulder girdle, because we start to see that particularly as we age, we see a lot of injuries of the shoulder girdle, of the shoulder rotator cuff. And if we want to limit those things by doing really heavily loaded carries, like farmers carries, can help reduce the risk of those injuries over time.
No, that's dope. I have to say, you know, I mean, so I mean, that's a major issue of muscle loss as we age. That's number one. I think that especially there's two angles that you tapped in there, right? So a large portion of this audience may be postmenopausal or perimenopausal women, and just the impact of the hormonal system, the inactivity, the muscle loss, the posture that then leads to contractions and other injuries is so predominant. It's so prevalent, rather, you know, that's there. So what's something simple that a listener out there who doesn't have access to a Dr. Islam is able to implement to just kind of help themselves in terms of like just mobility exercise?
Mobility exercises. I mean, honestly, waking up, like, I love YouTube these days because it really just has free options. And this is making the assumption that you have access to the internet or access to watch it. So my apologies if you're I don't know how the hell you'd be watching this, but you know what I'm saying. But things are free on the internet, and you can find 10-minute mobility routines that you follow along with every day. And my suggestion is find something short and sweet and stick to it for 30 days. And you'll find within 30 days that you'll be sleeping better, you'll be moving better, you'll be feeling better. It's going to have greater chronic impact because over time, that 5 to 10 minutes of mobility or stretching has great impacts, not only on the muscle cell itself, but on your mental acuity, on your cognitive function, on your mental health. So utilize YouTube. I think I'm going to upload, because of that, I'm actually going to upload a 5 to 10 minute mobility thing on our Vegan Corn Hub page for you guys, because I think it is something really important for everyone to access.
Perfect. And I'll get that link for that, and I will embed that inside the show notes for this too, as well, that you can go down there and grab that. So you mentioned something a little odd, right? To the listener out there, they may say, as you said you exercise so you can rest. Isn't that like an oxymoron? If I'm exercising, how am I going to rest better if I'm moving more?
I mean, fatigue truly does set in. I think when you put a lot of effort into activity, aren't you chronically fatigued? If you put a lot of effort into anything, whether it is writing a paper or taking your kids from location to location because you are the chauffeur, that takes a significant amount of effort and energy. And what do you find? That you're chronically fatigued at the end of your day. Imagine if you put that amount of effort focused on you for 20 to 30 minutes. That's it. I know that may seem impossible for many people, but that may require us to make some sort of sacrifices in terms of like sleeping a little bit, like getting up a little bit earlier, walking a little bit further from where we're used to parking. It may be impacting your convenience, but like I say again, if you're not making time for your wellness, you're definitely making time for your illness.
I love it. And this may or may not make sense, but it just popped in my head right now, so I'm gonna say it. Sometimes you have to sleep less to sleep more.
Yes.
Right? And so if you sleep less by getting up, as she's saying, to exercise, you're gonna go a bit earlier because you're tired and more fatigued.
And more of a deeper sleep, entering REM cycle. Like, how many of you guys wake up multiple times throughout your evening? And not just to pee, right? Like there may be some other adverse factors there for your audience. But if you're just having jolted sleep, like really interrupted sleep, a lot of that has to do with our day behaviors. Like, for example, I always say to my clients, what's the first thing you do in the morning when you wake up? Do you just reach for your phone and look for a screen? Or is the first thing you do is turn off an alarm clock like we had before the 90s, and get up, rotate your ankles and your joints around, be conscious in your being. For all I'm asking is your first minute of waking to focus on you. Yeah. And then open up the curtains, step outside with a hot cup of tea. Remember, in Eastern medicine, what we always recommend is to start your day with a piece of fruit, something high in fiber, and with a warm beverage, because what it really does is start to help digestion. So my recommendation is always have a glass of water to room temperature by your bed. So before you even get out of bed, the first thing you're doing is drinking 16 to 32 ounces of water. You'll be amazed to see that the next step is elimination, right? And eliminating without your cell phone in your hand. And that's so gross for so many reasons. Let's not even talk about bacteria, but whatever, I digress.
Come on now, that's right.
Have something there, like a paper or a book that you're interested in reading, and just start perusing, because what it does to your cognitive function is significantly different. And it's wiring a totally different type of neuroplasticity, a behavior for you to start creating as your go-to. And it's going to change. It's going to change and rewire your system in so many ways that you're going to find yourself being more functional and efficient and proficient in your days if you just start to change your morning routines, your morning behaviors. And again, by not looking at a screen and walking outside and trying to have exposure to low-level sunlight is really going to impact your dopamine receptors. And this is the way that humans are intended to function. You know, we're foragers. We walk long distances. We should be rising with the sun and going to bed with the sun. But now, because of the use of all of these technological tools, it's changed our REM cycle. So physical activity has a really strong component to getting us back to the ways that we are wired to be.
Love it. Love it. And just to add just briefly, it's just the sunlight, that early morning sunlight does so much for our melatonin stimulating hormone and resetting and getting us primed in that circadian rhythm. So we're going to be able to kind of get rest in the evening time. And that's one of the key things that's power packed in what she mentioned. You know, the tea, thinking if you're having green tea and the rich in antioxidants that are there, that you're feeding your body on a cellular level. And now you're feeding the body from the sunlight that's also releasing nitric oxide that's stored in your skin. There's so many added benefits when you begin to do this. It just, you know, I smile when I start thinking about the potentials. So I love to get away. And when I can really hone in on doing it, but the key isn't getting away. The key is incorporating it into your daily routine.
Yes.
Especially when you live in Vegas. Right?
Especially when you live in Southern California. Like, back up. Are you kidding me? This guy does not have a tough life where he lives.
Well, that's a different story, different day. All right. This is my show. Quit trying to turn the tables on me. I'll turn the tables on you.
I love it.
All right. So now you said something else that was key when you were talking about Babette, and you talked about her nutrition. So you're saying that you can still perform, you can still counteract muscle loss and gain muscle by having a whole food plant-based diet, that there's enough protein that's there. Speak to that as it relates to if I want to build muscle, if I want to recover right quickly so I can go in and hit the weights again. How does our nutrition play a role with that?
I mean, our nutrition has so many powerful antioxidants and vitamin-rich proponents to ensuring that we can reduce inflammation, continue to do work. Like, we're finding research that incorporating beet juice into your daily consumption pre and post workout reduces inflammation by 36%. That's a third of your day where you're not feeling sore, or a third of the time where you would be feeling chronically fatigued or inflamed that you're not, which is huge. They're also seeing some similar effects with cherry juice or tart cherry juice. So pick your poison. But you know, things that like veggies, greens for calcium, and high in iron or non-heme iron, or rich in folate, like vitamin B. This plays a huge mood regulation, right? So you want to be in a good mood. You got to have your green veggies. You want to have things that contribute to anti-aging. We're talking about like beta carotene. So like carrots and sweet potatoes. So you can eat these things, these carbohydrate dense things like sweet potatoes, and still get your bang for your buck, because it really kind of mitigates the free radicals that are happening within the system that are contributing to aging. What you find that Babette is a huge proponent of is like her sea moss. And what we're finding is that sea veggies are really great because they have high levels of iodine in them. So they're really great for thyroid function. And so when people are like, oh, well, I have a malfunctioning thyroid, or I've got hypothyroidism, and they seem to be gaining weight, often when we start adding these natural sources of foods in them, we start to see an impact. I'm not saying it alleviates the system, because there may be so many other things that impact someone's thyroid, right? But your go-tos, your legumes, your beans, your peas, your lentils, like, they're your fiber champions. And what we're talking about is that, like, fiber should be your focus, not protein. Protein is in everything. Fiber. Because like, this is what kind of makes me sad, because the American College of Sports Medicine and USDA say anywhere between 26 and 28 grams of fiber daily, which is so low. We need minimally 40 grams to be like doing something effective. And I think what most people don't realize is that how effective fiber is to eliminating toxins from your body. So, for example, anytime you eat something, it gets filtered through your liver, which is why I don't know why the hell people want to eat a filtration device, but I digress. Filters through the liver, exits through the bile duct, and exits through the intestinal tract, right? And so if we don't have adequate amounts of insoluble fiber that pushes all of this negative toxicity, literally pushes the waste away out of your system, what we have is enterohepatic circulation. So all these toxins re-enter the bloodstream, go back through the liver, and they go through this process over and over again. They get reabsorbed, and we see this process occur multiple times a day. And you wonder why you're groggy, why you can't pass, why you can't eliminate, why you're feeling metabolically drained, or maybe you do have a metabolic dysfunction. You're dealing with diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And so if you're not eating these foods that better help regulate these things, all the exercise you do in the world is not going to matter. And the one thing I got to tell you is that meat and dairy doesn't have fiber.
Nope.
High levels of estrogen, though.
Cut out the middleman. They eat the fiber.
Yeah.
But we don't need to eat them.
No.
How did you move towards becoming vegan?
Oh my gosh.
Did you grow up being vegan? Did you grow up being plant-based?
No. We grew up eating.
What's the main food in Bangladesh?
I mean, we do a lot of beef curry. Okay. Lots of beef curry. And interestingly enough, like a lot of the foods are vegan. Like you have your dal puri, you have which is like a little flour tortilla filled with lentil. You have fried, what we call pokora. You have fried lentil, eggplants. But then that's always a side dish. It's like it's very Americanized in that aspect now. But there's a lot of beef curry, goat curry, chicken curry. Okay. And I gave up dairy first because it was messing with my acne and I couldn't be on stage with it. So that was one thing. And then what really kept me, I gave up meat and chicken, but it was the fish and the eggs. The fish and the eggs. And so I went to a wedding as a +1 with my best friend who was Playmate of the Year, 2014, Kennedy Summers, and she's been a long
I don't know anything about that. I have no idea who you're talking about.
Oh.
I don't read any Playboy magazines ever. I never have.
She's also a medical doctor, so fancy that. She finished her.
I never saw. I don't know who this person is.
Well, you are so funny. This woman, I went with her to Mexico, and as a cultural respect of how I grew up, I didn't want to eat fish or eggs in front of her. We shared every meal together, and it wasn't necessary.
She was vegan.
She is vegan, yeah. Okay. And she said, "You know what, Shabnam, you haven't eaten any animal products since we've been here. I dare you to go vegan for 30 days. And I said, okay. And then, I went down the rabbit hole. In 10 days, I lost seven pounds. And I was like, what? All I'm doing is eating carbs? How is this happening? In 30 days, I lost 17.
Wow.
And I had been trying to shed this weight. Like I was 138 pounds. And I'm like, I just can't shed that. Back to 122. And that's less than what my weight was when I was competing. And I was like, oh, there's something here. And then I just couldn't look back, because then it became more about the social injustice of what our food system is, not about performance, which I feel very lucky to be, the purpose of veganism is you really go, oh man, I can't be a part of this. But that was my story. Pretty vapid.
No, I love it, because it brings the point, right, that we have to, I think this is an important concept when it comes to veganism or plant-based for whole food plant-based for health purposes, is that we have to engage people where they're at from a perspective of love.
Yes.
And so you described the transition of giving up core meat to just your fish, and then giving up fish, you gave up dairy, and then making this transition that's there. And you weren't, had you been met with this vitriol of what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Better, you should do it. As opposed to like, hey, why don't you consider this? Did you ever consider this? And you begin the process of engaging people, meeting them where they're at. That's what we have to do, I think, as a society, And
Absolutely.
we have to keep our eye on the prize, and you begin to have this awareness. So you can't vilify people if they've gone down the road of veganism for a health perspective, that they're whole food plant-based for health, because guess what starts to happen? You start to have this increased consciousness of awareness. The thought process begins to improve as you begin to kind of disentangle the amyloid deposits and so forth. And now all of a sudden this awareness begins to happen, and you're like, man, this cruelty of animals is no bueno. This
Yeah, this is
interaction
not
with the
cool.
cruelty of animals, and then you're looking at the environmental impact of things, and it starts to all make sense. You're like, I'm really not down with that. I'm not good
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
right, at all. And so I think it's so important. I think our approach.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. What you kind of transitioned and how you've done that, and so tell us about some of the things that you're doing, the advocacy inside the. I mean, you are. I started to say, and don't get offended anyone out there, that she's Jamaican because she has 1,000 things going on. You're with Babette. I see you with Babette. You're on Twitter. We met at Physicians Committee Responsible Medicine,
Yes.
their LA event that was there. I'm hearing about your teaching. All of a sudden, you're dropping science. I'm like, she's a straight up professor. I can hear it in just the way you go about stuff. And I'm like, nah, this isn't play. She really is a straight up professor. So tell us about all the things that you're doing. Right.
Thank you. Too much, but that's good. That's how you feel your life with purpose, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I've been teaching for 10 years at Cal State Northridge at an applied fitness course. I'm finishing my dissertation right now. So it's been a lot academically, I think, for me. But I'm also the spokesperson for VKind. VKind is an all vegan app that aims to expand the veg economy, because our goal is to create that connection with consumerist choices and social impact. And I think there are a lot of industries now in the plant-based sphere that allow us to not have to sacrifice one for the other. And I think I'm very excited to be on this path. And with VKind, I'm traveling a lot. I speak at a lot of events. I just spoke at Black Veg Fest. Went to the AVA Summit, and I mean, it's basically I spoke at the Vegan Women's Summit. There have been lots of things that I've been doing this year. I think since I took the spokesperson role with VKind, which has kind of been my hope to kind of segue out of institutionalized education at one institution and kind of go more of a global aspect. Ideally, my goal is to not only work in public policy, but I'd really like to go on a school tour with Chef Babette and talk to kids, talk to administrators, change the current status quo. And I mean, and then I exercise. I'm like, I don't know, when I've got time, I really love downtime. I feel like as much extroversion I do, I'm a true introvert. I like to come home and I can only rewire in quiet and peace.
I'm with you right
Yeah.
there, right
Yeah.
there. I'm probably going to be left with about 10 words for the rest of the day, after this interview. So, I mean,
And I've got a
just
couple more interviews today. So it's really interesting. So in between those interviews that I conduct, I'm trying to write and finish and train clients. So I still have those clients that I'm seeing in person and online. So I'm going back to LA next week for an event, and we'll also be meeting all my clientele to, do reassessments and training. And so I think it's been really exciting, because I feel like I'm finally starting to create a life that I've always imagined, but it takes
I
time.
love it. I love it. Man, I might have to get you as my personal trainer, my instructor. Man, I
Yeah.
need to take it up a notch. I need to take it up a notch after being on this call with you. This
Well, at
is
least I always say
incredible.
like an assessment. I think the things with people like me, because we are inherently expensive, and because I finally realized that I need to not accommodate what I need to help others, which is at times why we do so many wide clinics, so I can help reach people that don't have the financial means. But if I'm working with people on a weekly basis, I always remember to tell them that your time with me is pretty short. We got 3 to 6 months to get you knowledgeable and on point with where you want to be. And so consider time with me an investment, like they would with you. Because your whole goal, I think, oftentimes is to empower people to to take the reins and the responsibility of their own life. And I think oftentimes when you have a trainer, you're always like, oh, this is my crutch. They hold me accountable. And I think a true health professional puts that onus on the other individual.
Love it. I could not agree more. Could not agree more. Absolutely. No, that's great. Okay, so we'll wrap things up here with one thing. I want to know your top 3 guilty pleasures, food-wise.
Oh my God, chocolate donuts. Like I am like, oh my God, there's this place in Vegas called Donut Time. It's open 24 hours. Please God, don't judge me for
It's
this.
Vegas, of course.
And I had been writing all day. And honestly, what does my brain need? Glucose, immediate glucose. And it's just like donuts. So I'm like, I'm going to get donuts. We drive, and it's 20 minutes from our house. We drive there and they're like, no vegan donuts. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So anything chocolate will be my top 3 any day.
All right. No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I am a recovered sugarholic. There is no doubt about that.
Really? So what have you done in replacement?
Oh, I smoothies. So I do a combination of smoothies. I make it. I worked at Baskin Robbins, Ocean. I told you this story, so don't get mad at me. Whatever else about. And so every 31 flavors, I tried all 62. Okay. right now, I'll bring them home. Worked in the ice cream shop when I went to college. So ice cream was my thing. I was a connoisseur of anything sweet. So I make my smoothies dense and where they're like ice cream. Top them with seeds. I'll go and maybe add some pistachios, add fruit on top of it. And I've literally gotten good, but I'll tell you who turned me on was Chef AJ. And those truffles, those truffles, the peanut butter truffles, it's like candy. Even my kids love it. When I make those with the dates, I feel like I'm cheating.
Oh no, so that's been a huge go-to. So I actually love to like melt vegan chocolate, cut dates in half, put some crunchy peanut butter, wrap the dates in chocolate, throw them in the freezer for 3 hours, and then I'm like, I start eating them. My partner comes home.
Have you had the date paste?
Oh my God, no! There's date paste.
You put date paste. I'm gonna send you Chef AJ's recipe.
Okay.
Put date paste. You put the peanut butter. You add the chocolate, and then you blend it up in the food processor. You freeze it. Then you scoop it out in balls. You can roll it inside chopped nuts if you want, or if I'm being extremely heart healthy, I'll put like golden flax, and roll it, and I freeze it back again. I'll just grab 1 or 2 balls out at a time, and I feel like I'm having my favorite candy bar.
Wait, and I want to jump on this because there's something to be said about eating raw whole foods and its effect on satiation. And so what I find is that when I eat donuts, I'll eat an entire dozen because there's no nutrient density to the food. Mm-hmm. And so you're fooling your brain into thinking that like you haven't gotten what you need yet. But when you eat these highly fibrous, whole food, plant-based foods, you can only eat like 2 or 3 of them before you're like, oh, okay, I can't eat anymore. I'm full. Right. And I really learned that from Dr. Baxter Montgomery when we were at his heart healthy clinic in Texas and Houston. Yeah. But man, those raw foods.
It's so important. And so, yeah, that's exactly why those are my go-tos. That's what's really helped me.
Now I got to do that. No more donuts for me then.
No, it's just because I know who I'm like. I literally am an addict.
Yeah,
it's not going to be just one, and I'm grown, so I can go in my car, nobody knows, and toss the box away, and nobody knows at all, right? So I mean, it's just, but I've matured enough that I'm not going to do that at this point. But literally, I will kill a whole entire whatever is who I am. I know. And it doesn't take much to get me back, so I just cannot do it.
But I think those are those behaviors that you've noted are huge in terms of changing behavior. So if we know that we have food addiction, and remember, this is all a chemical reaction in the brain, and it is very true. You can be just as addicted to food as you are to exercise and as you are to, smoking. But not having that stimulation in the house or in points that you could peak with it is really important. So if you are that person that needs to not have it there at the beginning, I would suggest that you really get to know who you are and be honest with yourself. Yeah.
Love it. Where can we find you on Instagram? I'm putting it up here. Tell us.
Dr. Shabnam Islam. That's DrShabnamislam.
All right. And how about on everywhere Twitter?
Oh God, is it sad that I stopped using Twitter?
No.
It was just so it was just so violent. Like, listen, by the time when Elon bought it and you could be dropping the N bomb on there, you lost me. You lost me. But I am on Threads, and same thing, Dr. Shabnam Islam. And we're on YouTube under Vegan Corn Hub. VEGAN Corn Hub, all one word.
Love it, love it, love it. Listen, it's been incredible connecting with you again. We are going to have to kind of collaborate even beyond this whole virtual kind of spiel here.
Yes.
We're gonna have to get Be Kind to somehow get involved with the HELP conference. I actually haven't mentioned the HELP conference on here with this audience here, but it's called the Health Equity Lifestyle Project Conference. It's a conference that what we're putting together is looking at health imperatives in the United States, maternal infant mortality. We're looking at the cardiovascular disease. We're looking at diabetes, mental health, and Alzheimer's, looking at the impact in communities at risk, those most burdened communities, and what the role of lifestyle, and specifically vegan, whole food, plant-based nutrition. That's day one, bringing in the likes of Milton Mills and Dr. Kim Williams and Dr. Baxter Montgomery and Dean and Aisha Sherzai too as well. But here's the key: is day two is where I'm probably most excited. Day two is what's the role of each and every one of us in reinvigorating the community towards a health perspective. What's the role of places of faith? What's the role of places of higher education? What's the role of hospital systems moving beyond their borders and really trying to invigorate the community, our youth, our next generation? And so I'm extremely excited. That is March 24th through 26th, and no other than the fastest growing city inside the United States. I will give you a free prize if you can tell me what the fastest growing city is in the United States. In 2022, in 2023, it's the second fastest growing city.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh,
is it Vegas?
No, it can't be Vegas, is it?
Is it LA?
It's got to be somewhere in the South.
What do you think? Take a stab.
Like Houston?
No. Close. Huntsville, Alabama.
What?
Yes. Don't they have like a reality series out there?
Right. I don't know. Who's got time for that? Definitely not you or me.
No. But yeah, Huntsville, Alabama. So listen, we're going to be in Huntsville, Alabama, of all places, the heart attack belt in the deep South, talking about, hey, y'all, we about to drop some whole food plant-based in here. So I'm excited. I can't
wait to be there. I'm going to be there. I want to be a part of that conference.
Love it.
So you count me in.
All right. I love it. And so listen, you all, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Heart to Heart. And I look forward to sharing another few moments with you next month. But follow this young lady. Follow her work. She's doing incredible work. She's a wealth of knowledge. And follow her on Be Kind. We gave you all the stuff that's out there. And I look forward to catching you next time. All right. Take care. Good to see you.
Thank you, you too.